Joe, how you doing? All right. So, you know, I want to start off because what's really interesting about Joe, before doing this project, he had never acted in his entire life before. And he tells this story that I tricked him into doing it. But, you know, I think one thing that's really important for everybody to understand is that when Joe went through this process, you know, you were 11 years old, right?
Yes.
He was 11 years old and has this incarceration history within his family, and actually went through and lived in an incarceration site. And so there's a lot of emotion that comes through that, especially doing something like this. So first of all, I just want to thank you, Joe, very much for what you've done, both in this film and for the community. I think it's so the film is it's very short. It's 15 minutes, and it's intentionally very short, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. It has a whole educational component to it. The content, as you saw, is a very narrow slice of this history, which is, you know, after the executive order was signed, everybody was forcibly removed. People say evacuated, that's not the right word. They weren't evacuated, that's for safety purposes. They were forcibly removed from their homes. And what you see in the film is up to the point when there's folks getting on a bus or a train to be moved from where they live to somewhere else. And so, Joe, you were, you know, around 11 years old. I wanted to ask you, kind of, what do you remember about the movements, about being moved, about being forced from where you lived?
Our family was
Talking to the mic.
our family was working in Canada. My father was a fisherman, and so we lived in San Diego Bay. And so he was working when the war started in Pearl Harbor. The war started, and since we lived right across the canneries, the bay, it's literally like 2 blocks from our home. We were in the fish cannery barracks where the cannery workers, you know, lived. They were like just like the regular army barracks too, I guess. And there were some Japanese there, and also a lot of the migrant Mexicans were there. And so, since we lived right across the bay, and just on the other side of where the warships were in the bay, so we had to move inland. So we had to move from right across the bay there to inland. So we moved to the sunny side, which is close to Chula Vista. And I guess I can't remember the building itself, but all I remember is, to me, I can just recall like a shack. And I think that was the first time what I call, we used to call it, now it's an outhouse, right? That was a toilet. So it was a different type of a home. So apparently it was made for the migrant workers too. And so, you know, from there we went to, when the executive order came out, when it was April 1st, then we had to be at the Santa Fe Depot, which is again right across the bay there. The depot is right across the bay. It's walking distance while the warships were, and so that's, and I guess April 8th. I can't remember exactly but that's when we had to be at the depot. So that's where we all went, and you can only take what you can carry. And so literally most of the families, our family, we had big duffel bag, canvas duffel bags. So I guess that's the easiest way to carry a lot of goods. Back then they didn't have, you know, big suitcases and they had trunks, but we didn't have it. We weren't able to take a trunk, so we had duffel bags, and then I kind of recall I was the youngest of a family of 8, and so we had a little suitcase that
Take your time, it's okay.
anyway, what happened was I recall having to put, my brothers and stuff would put different things in a suitcase. The reason why was to see how much I could carry. And so that's one of the things that I can remember. And I guess I was 11 years old. And so the bag that you see in the film, the canvas bag, is the original bag. That my family took to the camps.
Yeah.
And I think, so Joe, because you were living around San Diego, right?
Right.
So what he was talking about with the warships, one of his brothers was a fisherman, and the fear at that time was that people who were doing things in the water could potentially be sending signals to Japanese warships, or somehow communicating with the enemy, and that was the fear. So what Joe's talking about in terms of first being moved from right off the bay inland, that was their first move, the first of 3 moves, I think, right? Because then you went from Sunnyvale. This is all in California, so if you look at your maps, you'll end up seeing that Joe got moved from basically San Diego to Sunnyvale, Anita racetrack, which is a very important step. When you think about what happened at this time, right? The government wasn't ready. They were ready from like the perspective that they had registered every Japanese American, and again, this comes to contemporary relevance about things like the Muslim registry. When Japanese American community hears that kind of stuff, it scares us, because right, that's the way that people understand where folks are located, and then can very quickly remove people. But it's important to know that things physically weren't ready. So like these confinement sites, these concentration camps, they weren't built yet. And so once that order hit, there wasn't anywhere for them to go. So Joe and his family, just like my mom's mother, right, and a lot of other family members, they were moved and they lived in Santa Anita racetrack in horse stalls. So you have to imagine like the loss of dignity, from people who made their lives in America, right, have worked very hard, towards the American dream, and you are moved because of your race, because of some fear and anxiety. You're moved from where you live to then live in a horse stall. And my grandmother, she talks about remembering graduating high school in a horse stall in Santa Anita racetrack. And Joe and his family were also there. So it's like this joke, right? I think, Joe, you told me this joke one time where you said people walked into Santa Anita and they were wondering who was going to get Seabiscuit's stall. Which is like terribly, it's a terrible thought, but it's like, a moment of like, humor in such a terrible moment of time. I want to move into maybe when, so you were in Santa Anita, and then you ended up in Poston. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like, or what you remember either about Santa Anita or about Poston? Poston, by the way, is a confinement site on the map, so.
Yeah, when San Diego, the depot there, we were put on trains, and we didn't know where we were going, and they didn't tell us. And so they had pulled down the blinds, and so you couldn't see out. And so it was kind of a commotion, and we're all wondering where we're gonna go, and I guess some people were peeking out the window. And the train didn't move until evening. I guess they wanted to have the train move from San Diego to San Diego racetrack at night. I guess it was cloak and dagger, like a secret, whatever. And so that's how we went by train to San Diego racetrack. And about Jason talking, yes, we lived in the horse stables. There were 2 rooms, right? You know what a horse stable looks like. I think we see in pictures. You have a back stall where the horses are, then in front there's another space. Well, that's what the horse stalls we lived in, and they were whitewashed with white paint. And you can still smell the new, tar floor. And people used to joke about it because they were very hastily putting the horse stalls were back to back, and then some people said, "Well, gee whiz, there's knockers, you can see the other side." And so anyway, it was kind of a joke, but I guess it was true. And the other thing is, we used to have fun running up and down the San Diego grandstands. That's how we used to play. I remember playing in the grandstand, just running around. And some kids had these, I guess you could, metal conduits they had then. There'd be a pipe like this long, and they would make arrows with newspaper, paper, make a pointed arrow, and they would get those and they'd shoot those around. And I remember I was on the young side, so I always wanted one. I could never get one. Anyway, so that was what we did in post San Anita, and we did a little bit sumo wrestling as the kids. Other than that, we didn't go to school. And I think most of you are going to feel this is fiction. But yeah, I remember we came right in September of 45. And by this time there was only myself and my sister right above me. I'm 14, I guess she was 16, and my mother. All the rest of the family had left camp prior to this. We were the last one that left because we had no place to go. So my older sister left camp early because they worked for what I call a wealthy position. They lived in the North Shore area, and so they were working as, I don't know what you call it, houseboy and house girl. And they worked with his family. Then at one point they were able to move, and so we moved to the west side of Chicago, right by the medical center. We lived on Marshall and Polk, just west of Ashland. And that's where they moved in. So we went, the 3 of us, my mother and my sister, we moved in with them. And he got a job at International Harvester. Anyway, the first day I come in September, and 2 days later, it's time to go to school, all right? I'm just going to start high school, I'm 14. So I can't remember, I came on Friday or something. I'm outside on Saturday. I go outside, and the first thing I know, some kid comes up and he's pushing me around. And so, he's calling me names, and I'm Japanese, and so we start fighting. And I got the best of him because in camp, there was a boxer that was from Los Angeles, Japanese guy. His good friend of one of my friends was teaching me how to box a little bit, and not really that well, but if you know a little bit at that age, there's no contest. The other guy can't fight and box, so it makes a difference. But the problem with that is the next guy comes, right? So the next guy comes want to beat me up, so I come home, I go back in the house, and I'm supposed to go to school that one day. I think it was late, September. And on the way to school, or, well, prior to this, my sister talked to the neighbor downstairs, and they had a son that was older than me. But he was different. I remember he had, you know, expensive slacks. You might call them zoot suit and slick hair. They used to put a lot of grease on their head at that time. So he must have been, you know, he was pretty sharp, or whatever you want to call him those days. But he was supposed to take me to school. Of course, we get around 2 blocks away, and away from home. He takes off. He's not going to go to school with me. So I'm going to school, and it's Puryear High School. It's a 2-year branch of McKinley. And another Irish big kid comes up and starts pushing me around again. So I pick up a rock, and I said, God damn, I want to kill you. So he lets me go. And so we're in gym class, and guess when the hell shows up? This Irish kid. Trader's name was. We became good friends later. But, so the coach has put the gloves on. And so we were boxing. Again, I'm a little better than him, so I'm getting the best of him. And so later, after this, you want me to keep going? The next thing is a dropout, and the coach, I remember his name, Coach Alice, was trying to mentor him and get him, you know, straighten him out. And so he comes up and he asks me, where'd you learn how to box? And I said, I learned in camp. And then he says, you know Tsuchiyama? And I said, yeah, he's the guy that showed me. Well, this Tsuchiyama was a couple of years older than me, and he had come to Chicago. He was boxing at the CYO. Same guy, so he was a boxer. So these Mexican kids were boxers too, this guy. And his name was Peter, and so what happened is he was going to the CYO in boxing too, and also another kid named Richard Guerrero, I think he ended up as a welterweight in the Olympics. In 60, I guess you said. But anyway, these guys, this guy Peter and his other, they took me under their wing. And they were Mexicans. And so after that, I didn't have too much problem. You know, they were boxers, and people know what's going on. So after that, it was a little bit better, but I had a tough life. I mean, I was in school, and I used to read in camp. I like to read, so we go to during school, you go to you had a time when you go to the library to read, right? And so I'm reading. I don't know anybody anyway. So, but later on, this librarian, I remember her name too, young. I tried to get hold of her later and I couldn't. But she sees who my friends are, or know what I'm going around. So for some unforeseen, I don't know why or how it happened, but at those days, that's in 45, right? You can't go to other schools. You had to go to school in your own district. And so somehow, she approached me and asked me if I wanted to, go to another school. She must have had some connections. I ended up going to Lakeview High School. That's 4000 North, right on Ashland. I'm living just 900 South Marshfield. That's just 2 blocks west of Ashland. So you can see we're going on a streetcar from 900 South and 4000 North. And after the first semester in first, so that's what I did. I was going to school, and apparently I said, okay, I'll go, and I went. And so I went. So
Got lucky.
yeah.
Got pulled out.